Penacony's story so far has been pretty good. You have betrayals, alliances being formed, dangerous future adversaries, a mystery developing in the background, and even sentient trash cans. It's still early into the patch, but I've had a lot of fun going through the story that I wanted to make a video discussing the good and the bad of Star Rail 2.0's main story. So this video is going to amount to me rambling about whatever we've experienced so far in the story and what I'm hoping to see in the future. Just fair warning, there's a lot of rambling. Before we dive into that, if you want to see more Honkai Star Rail content, do consider subscribing to the channel. Given that I'll be talking about the story here, there is going to be a few things that I'll be spoiling. So if you haven't played through the main story yet, I'd suggest you do that first. I'm sure by this point, if you've been watching my other videos over the last week or so, you're pretty tired of hearing this disclaimer, but what can you do? The story of Penacony involves the Nameless traveling to the planet of festivities based on an invitation given out by the family. The planet is looking to carry out its annual celebrations, and many groups from different corners of the universe have been invited. Penacony was initially our main destination before the entire Xianzhou Luofu debacle occurred. Now on the surface, Penacony is functionally Disneyland. It's a place where every person can find some form of entertainment they could enjoy, from live concerts to slot machines and all manner of funky food. Their main attraction, however, is the ability to enter a dream world where any and all wishes can be granted and any experience is open to you, all from the convenience of your own hotel room. As guests start shuffling in, the main character starts to be introduced to many of the universe's main players, from the IPC to the family and even the Galaxy Rangers. Each of them, despite appearing nice and cordial initially, seem to have their own agenda, and as the story unfolds, we learn that Penacony might not be the happiest place in the universe. In fact, there seems to be some dark secret the family isn't being totally honest about. On top of all of that, it seems that the family didn't even invite everyone who's here. And this is where I'll talk about the first thing I like about the story, its theme. This time around, it isn't a straightforward, here's the bad guy, your group is the good guys, go and fight it out. Instead, each character introduced have their own goals, and most present don't seem to be either good or bad. You have the memo keeper looking to only record the memories of what is about to transpire. You have the businessman clearly looking to benefit in a transaction they are orchestrating. You have the chaotic fool looking for fun. And then you have the lone stranger with a suspicious past. All of them invited by some secret benefactor that even the family isn't aware of. It reminds me a lot of murder mysteries, and the story even has elements of a thriller or mild horror. You never know who you can trust, and each time someone appears to be on your side, the narrative is flipped. I love this approach because it keeps me super interested in trying to figure out what each person's agenda is and who I can trust. Plus, all these different players all move at their own pace, regardless of what the main character is doing. And that goes into my second positive point. Because there are multiple plot points, which in itself is a positive, and because each character isn't just waiting around for the main character to make their move, the world feels more fleshed out. While we are making alliances with Black Swan, Aventurine is doing the same. As we unravel the story in the dreamscape, Sparkle is off orchestrating things in the background. It makes the world feel more lived in, and that the story isn't just about the main character and the Nameless, but all the characters are involved. Each progression in the story creates a hook that makes you want to continue on to the next part. Should we continue working with Black Swan? What in the world is Sparkle planning? What exactly is Mr. Sunday doing? A singular storyline often makes it easy to guess what comes next, but with so many players and events and different branches running concurrently, it leaves me always guessing what might happen, as any character might make a surprise appearance to essentially flip the table. It's emblematic of the typical whodunit or murder mystery as I mentioned earlier, and only when all the pieces reach the end do we get the full picture. Now, despite me sort of reviewing things here, the story is still in its infancy. We've only just been introduced to many of its major characters, and the plot hasn't reached its climax, so things may end up being rushed as we get closer to the end, and reveals happening left, right, and center, but for now, it's still pretty good. One last thing I'll add in terms of a positive is the fact that outside of the main story, the subquests included as part of 2.0 are really good. Some of them even tie to characters not even in Penacony, but I won't spoil it any further than that. A lot of them are pretty tragic tales of why people come to Penacony, and despite it being shown as an overall fun and happy place, the truth is that many come to alleviate the trauma or problems they face day to day. I love the fact that more serious narratives are provided and it's not just save the day stories. Now, it's pretty clear that I absolutely enjoyed the story and Penacony so far, but to be fair, I'm going to also point out some negatives here. Firstly is that it might feel short for some of you. Truthfully, I never really felt it was short while playing, but when I look at it on paper, the amount of time it takes to clear most of the main story is really only a couple of hours. Now, this is a nitpick at best, and the perception of time will vary from person to person, as a friend of mine felt it was a pretty long campaign. But again, if you're the type to just blast through everything, the puzzles in the main story aren't particularly difficult, so you might breeze through them relatively fast and get to the end of the story. Another thing that kind of bothered me was some details about the plot wasn't entirely clear or properly explained. First of all, when the main character first fell asleep on the train and wakes up, Pom Pom mentions that the main character might have some sensitivity to memoria, which caused them to have such dreams. This fictional substance, memoria, is mentioned a couple of times in the story, but it's never explained what it exactly is. Now, maybe I missed the explanation and it was mentioned somewhere, but a little tooltip reminder of what some of these terms are might have been helpful, though I get not wanting to clutter the story text with definitions. Again, it's a minor gripe. Aside from that, the idea of death within the dreamscape isn't really clearly explained either. For example, Firefly's death resulted in her being turned into goop and treated by everyone as somewhat permanent. On the other hand, when Robin was found dead, her brother, Mr. Sunday, referred to it only as a spiritual death, despite reacting like her death was permanent, even though her body dissolved as well. It kinda confused me as to how death worked for those in the dreamscape. Was it permanent, or would they just wake up? Now, these two gaps in how the mechanics of the world function might actually be plot points, and their vagueness is purely to not give the story away. But if it isn't, I kinda wish they made it a bit clearer. I'm sure at this point it's pretty obvious that I'm really just nitpicking for the purposes of being neutral. Personally, I think the overall story and the positives I mentioned largely eclipses the very minor problems I have with it. And I haven't really even talked about Penacony itself or any of the events yet. I love stories that are darker and have more sinister undertones, with secrets hiding in the background, and the story so far has done a great job of hooking me in, so don't misunderstand my comments here. I overall still enjoyed it. I honestly can't wait to experience the rest of it and learn the dark past of each of the main characters, and ultimately the truth the family is attempting to keep hidden. So the TLDW is that Penacony's story is so far going strong. It's kept me engaged, and even being in its beginnings, there's already 2 supposed deaths. Overall, it's off to a great start. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of the story so far? How does it compare with past stories? Are there any moments that feel too silly, and am I just being biased here? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this little ramble, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice day.